This is the Freeheel Life Podcast, episode number 147. I'm your host, Josh Madsen, coming at you from the Freeheel Life shop in Salt Lake City, Utah. And welcome back, friends. Love to be here on these Mondays with all of you, and love talking Telemark. So, to hop right in it, classic newsroom and notes, nothing too new other than we're going to be opening the retail space sometime mid-October. Stuff's starting to trickle in. I know we've got some M equipment bindings on the way, the Majo. So that's a good highlight. We've got some other stuff coming in. The main thing is we're trying to queue all of you up who are looking to support Freeheel Life as your preferred Telemark retail stop. And the best way to do that is email customer service at freeheellife.com. And we've got all sorts of people lined up to get gear, and we're trying to get you ready. It is September, so remember, skiing's only a few months away, and we want to get you squared away, get it all buttoned up, make sure you got the right stuff on your feet. As far as Protector skis, we are now sold out of the Protector 105 as well, and we have some... I believe Protector 95, so that's 95 underfoot in the 184 centimeter length. So if you're looking to get on a pair of Freeheel Life Protectors, this is the time to get them. As I've been mentioning the last couple of weeks, uncharted territory in terms of producing the skis during the winter because we only have so many of us, and we've got to make sure to keep it going. So highly possible we'll have them, but if you want to get them for sure, this is the chance, and we would love for you to do that. Other than that, be sure to check out our social media. If you're on the Facebook platform, head on over to our Freeheel Life forum. There's thousands of people in there. It's really cool. I've been getting in there once a week at minimum and just talking about stuff, posting some fresh content, and we're going to be kind of up in the excuse me, up in the pace on that, and as well as on the YouTube and all that good stuff. So today, my guest, I'm really excited for all of you to check out this conversation. He originally is from the East Coast. He grew up wanting to be an inventor, and he went on to become an engineer, and actually started telemark skiing because his father telemark skied for a little while, and he decided he was going to try it, and ended up becoming very passionate about it. And at some point in the early 2000s, after keeping lists of invention ideas, he decided that he was going to take a stab at something that he thought was achievable, that he wouldn't have to go in debt doing. And Bluebird Day Gear was born, and he started making Telemarked leashes to fasten from the boot to the bindings, and wanted to take his invention and his spin on it and get into that. Subsequently, he went on to create two other products, bringing back the Smile plates, which is a 3-pin reinforcement for the 75 millimeter boots, as well as aluminum heel levers that have a universal compatibility as an aftermarket product. And it's a really cool story. And we ended up here at Freeheel Life Industries acquiring Bluebird Day Gear a couple of years ago. And this kind of shed some light on that story, and was really excited to have the opportunity to chat and kind of bring some of this to light. So I think that's a good intro. So without further ado, please welcome to the podcast, Jeff Cox. All right, Jeff, welcome to the Freeheel Life Podcast. How's it going, my brother?
Thanks, man. It's going well. I wish there were snow out my window right now, but give me another 2 months. I think we'll have some.
Are you guys getting the heat wave back there like we are here?
It's not bad right now. It's maybe like 70s today, which is made for awesome mountain biking weather today.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, it was like, well, I guess it was rainy and probably closer to that today. Last week was like 100, something. It was pretty bad.
Man.
Brutal. But yeah, wait, where are you based out of now?
So I'm in New Hampshire now.
Okay.
About, I don't know, 45 minutes north of when you visited me in Vermont, though. Not very far.
Okay, nice. That's awesome. Very good. Now you're in the live free or die state, which is always a good spot.
I'm trying to live and not die in it, but the main attraction of where we are is we got one of these little tiny town ski hills in our town. It's awesome. It's one tiny pommel lift, 2 trails, 2.5 if you count their tiny little terrain park, and I can see it from my house, and I can just take the kids there. It's awesome.
Oh, I love that.
Other town didn't have that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's what I love about the East Coast is you guys always have like the little town hills, and I feel like it's going to go back to that. I say that often on the podcast that it's getting so expensive that I feel like the only way to grow skiing in the future is people are going to have to open like rope tow and pommel lifts and buy all the old double chairs and open up ski areas. So
yeah, well, if this place had a double chair, man, we'd be living it.
Yeah, you'd be styling. That's like the future. I love that. Well, I'm psyched to have you on. I kind of wanted to talk about the history of Bluebird Day Gear, but I want to get your history first, because I always feel like that's a great place to start, is kind of where you came from, where you grew up, how you got into skiing, all that fun stuff. And I don't even know if I know, are you from Vermont or New Hampshire originally?
No, not originally. I was born in Pennsylvania, but moved to Delaware when I was, I think, 2, and learned to ski. From there, my folks would take me up to Waterville Valley once a winter. And so, did the ski wee thing there, learned how to do it. And then we moved from there to Vermont when I was 12, 13, something like that. So got to, as you can imagine, do a bit more skiing from Vermont than from Delaware. But I don't know. After that, I lived in a whole bunch of other places. And the sort of the history of Bluebird kind of grows out of all of that, is that I grew up doing alpine, the ski wee thing at Waterville Valley, of course, was all alpine. But my dad had dabbled with Tele in the 80s. And he did, I think it was at Bromley that they had their Corey Anderson Fest earlier. They still have it. Corey's not with us anymore, but back in the day, in the 80s, when he was still around, my dad would do that thing when we were in Vermont. So he had this, pair of skinnies, Karu, I don't know what the hell they were called, but, they were like 2 inches wide with the segmented steel edges and 3 pins and leathers and stuff. And he would tell me about it afterwards, as conditions have got to be absolutely perfect, both on the snow and in his head, and it would just be awesome. But that would happen once every few years, and the rest of the time it would just suck.
That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the reason I'm chuckling about it is because he basically gave up on it and put the skis in the closet. And then when I was, I don't know, 19 or something, at the peak of my wisdom, I decided I'm going to try this. I got to, it wasn't quite, I got to best my old man, but I got to find out what this was all about. And so I borrowed his skis and I borrowed his boots, and I was living in California at the time. I think I was at Mammoth. And I was riding the lift up. I'm going to be as smart as I can be and teach myself. Why would I take a lesson? That's stupid. I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to figure it out, because that's how you learn to do all the best things. And I ride up the lift with this guy, and he looks at me and says, "What the hell are you doing on leathers? Go get yourself some plastic boots. You'll have a much better time." And so I kind of blew him off, because it was, I'm going to learn this the right way. And I go out there and I fall on my face all day, and it's awesome. And I didn't really learn how to do it. And then the next day I rented some plastic boots. And that, obviously that crutch helped a lot. I need to get myself another pair of leathers because I don't have those anymore. They didn't really fit anyway. But now that I actually know how to do it, I want to go back and I want to get better at that. And that, the town ski hill is perfect for that sort of thing. But I picked it up and I think from that day, I don't want to say I've never been back on alpines, but it's probably single digit days after that. I think it was Telly's from there on out, barring like the 2 or 3 days before I could actually get myself a pair at a ski swap. And it's been awesome since then. Everybody's got their Telly origin story, and just like everybody else, I got hooked.
I love that.
So that's how I got into Telly. And then my parents saw me having enough fun. Maybe I'm being self-centered here saying that, but they were kind of getting back into it at the same time. I'll take some credit for being, evangelizing to them about, you should really try these plastic boots. They're awesome. But they got it. My dad got back into it and my mom got into it. And they're in their mid-70s now and they're still Tellying, and it's awesome. I wish I lived closer so I could still ski with them more often, but that's how life goes. But it was probably in about, 2005-ish, something like that. I was skiing with my parents in Colorado. It's probably 2006 then, because I was living there, they were living there, and so we would ski together. And my mom is from Texas and didn't grow up with a visceral relationship with cold. She gets by, she does great, she skis every winter. It's awesome, but it doesn't talk to the bottom of her brain the way it talks to the bottom of your brain if you grew up in a cold place. And so first thing, I would see her take off her glove or take off her mitten, because she would always wear mittens to keep her hands warm, take off her mitten to put on her leash, and then put on her mitten, and then she'd have cold hands all day. And I just thought, this is ridiculous. And I was, again, 19, 20, whatever the heck I was, being at the peak of my wisdom, skiing the hardest that I've never been a superstar skier or anything, but I was having a good time. I was skiing hard for me. And so I'd take spills, and half the time, if it came off, there'd be half a leash attached to my boot and half a leash attached to the ski. And so I started this collection of busted leashes. And it's just that together with watching my mom take off her mitten and having cold hands, it got me thinking. And the other side of that story that's sort of the where did I come from part of it is, you ask an elementary school kid what they want to be when they grow up. After I realized that I couldn't be a fighter pilot or something like that because I'm colorblind. I don't think I'd be a good fighter pilot anyway. But, check that off the list. You got to go through that kind of stage once. It's either pro baseball player or it's fighter pilot or it's whatever. I got through that. Pretty quickly it was, I'm going to be an inventor. I didn't really know what you do as an inventor, but I invented things when I was a kid. In second grade, we had this inventors unit, which was, you got to invent something, you got to write it up, you got to build it, you got to bring it in. I invented an electrically heated ice cream scoop. Turns out it had been invented long before, but I didn't know that. Because I would watch my second grade.
Second grade. That's legit for second grade.
Because I would watch my grandmother put the ice cream scoop in a thing of, a glass of hot water to make the scooping easier. And I thought, that's silly. I can do better than that. And so I was going to build one. I was going to strip the wire, the insulation. I was going to cut the cord off of something, strip the insulation off and wrap the cord around a metal ice cream scoop. And I had this awesome dip rubber stuff. You dip your plier handles and stuff in it. I knew I had to insulate it, make it safe. So I was going to insulate the ice cream scoop and then plug it in. It was going to make it hot. That's how electricity works, right? And thankfully, my parents knew better, and they let me do everything except plug it in. And so instead of taking the thing to school and plugging it into the wall, I also had to build a fake wall with a fake outlet to plug it into. So it didn't actually get hot, which was a real bummer. But it also didn't burn down the school and kill me, which is pretty awesome. So, I appreciate the fact that they didn't let me electrocute myself with this thing. But, second grade, I knew what I needed to do. Well, fast forward.
Yeah. Take me there. That's what I was curious.
Ahead,
no, that's what I was curious about. Yeah. Take me to where the inventor comes into real life later in life.
Yeah. So, my actual job title is engineer. I'm not, my business card doesn't say inventor, but I keep lists of invention ideas, and most of them are stupid. But, you got to write them all down, because sometimes a stupid idea turns into an awesome idea after you've sat on it for 10 years. But I would literally keep lists and lists and lists of these organized ideas. And at some point, my wife and I decided we've got to do something on this list. I'm not going to live the rest of my life not trying to do one of these things. I've got to try and actually be an inventor for once. So we printed out every single list. It's like single point or single space 10-point font on printer paper, tack them up on the walls, and there's like 20, 30 pages of lists.
Wow.
Got to get them all out. You got to see them all at once. And so it was, well, how the hell do I pick out of these? We got to choose one. And so we started crossing things off and just being ruthless about it. And so, it'd be stuff like, well, if I'm going to do this one, I need to be a biologist. I'm not a biologist. I can't do it. Cross it off. To do this one, I need $1 million to build a factory to do whatever the hell it is. I don't have $1 million to build a factory. Cross it off the list. And so just keep crossing stuff off, taking pages down as all the stuff gets crossed off. And so we got it to the point where it's got to be a fully fleshed out idea. It's got to be a good idea. It's got to be in a field that we know about. It's got to be in a field that we actually like. And it's got to be doable with the amount of money that we have. We didn't even own a house at the time, so we weren't going to mortgage a house or anything. But it was, we're not going to go into debt to do this thing. And so we cross off everything that didn't work. And the only idea left on there, after really being ruthless, we got to get it down to one idea. The only one left was, I got to make some better ski leashes.
Out of like 30 pages.
Oh, yeah. And some of those I still think are pretty good ideas, but I'm still not a biologist. I still don't have $1 million to build a factory. So, it still seems like a pretty good idea to have chosen.
I'm curious. I'm curious if is there any idea that because obviously there's probably some good ideas in there. I'm curious what's like the one idea that you could actually share that you'll never do, but you thought was an awesome idea. Is there anything in that? I'm just curious, like what kind of stuff are we talking about here, Jeff?
Oh man. So part of the reason I write it down is because I'm not actually all that good at remembering stuff off the top of my head. Because once I write it down, it's saved, and I don't need to keep track of it. So I'm probably going to do a crappy job of coming up with something off the top of my head. And I might have to get back to you on that. But there's all kinds of crap on there, for one thing. But, man, a good one. Let's see. All right, here's a good one. I'm sure I'm never going to do this. Have you ever had a dog?
We just got our first dog like 6 months ago.
Have you ever had to take a urine sample from that dog?
No, I have not. Should I have taken one already? I don't know.
I mean, if your dog gets sick, you might need to take urine sample.
Okay. All right.
So, I've had to do that. My dog had a UTI or something, and we had to take urine sample. And maybe it's easy with some dogs, but it sure wasn't easy with my dog. You know, you take the guy on a walk, you got this little cup, you know, you're supposed to just put it under there when he's peeing. But he gets started peeing, and you try and push his cup under there, and he freaks out. He's, what are you doing with that thing? And he stops peeing. And so it's, you know, you chase your dog around for a day trying to do this. But at the same time, you take your dog on the walk. What's he do? The entire walk, he pees on stuff. He pees on stuff that smells like other dogs' pee. And so what I want to make, and I'm probably never going to do this because I'm not a vet. I'm not a medical device manufacturer. But I want to make a little vacuum-formed, tiny little fire hydrant plastic urine collection cup that has a little thing on it that's impregnated with the smell of other dogs' pee. So you put that up against the wall outside, your dog smells it, says, I know what to do with this, and he pees on it. And it collects it in the little sample cup, and you take it to the vet.
Wow. That's wild. You really are like keeping a list of like a wide, like just daily stuff happening then. And then you're like, oh yeah, I can improve on that. You know?
Yeah, I mean, that's how my brain works, man, is most of the time they're stupid. And, you know, some of the time they seem like good ideas. And, you know, then I tell them to somebody and then it sounds stupid. You know, I bet a lot of people, whoever listens to this, you know, 10% of them maybe think, yeah, I'd buy that. My dog. And it's hard to get your dog to pee in a cup. The other 90%, maybe you're going to think, that's the stupidest idea I've heard all year. But I don't know. I write them all down. But yeah, hundreds of stupid ideas. We whittle it down. This is the one that's left.
Yeah. Well, and that's cool. That's actually really cool to hear because I feel like that is like the true, I don't know if I've ever met anybody like that, man. That's like seems in line with the invention aspect of stuff, you know, like where you're actually looking at how to improve daily life, you know, and I mean, it's not just like, here's my 3 ideas I'm going to focus on. I mean, you're literally like countless pages of stuff on, and yeah, it's probably how the world gets better is just somebody is like you thinking about how do I do this thing? This is annoying, you know, like I want to change this. So that's cool.
I mean, I'd like to think that making the leashes and stuff has made the world a slightly better place. Maybe the dog pee collection thing would make it a more better place, but I haven't done that one yet. So if anybody's listening and can actually do it, please do it because I'd buy it from you.
That's amazing. Well, that's a. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, man.
No, I was
just going to say that you know, some of this early on, you know, thinking of the leashes stuff, I had a totally different attitude towards inventing then. That I would have some idea. So, for example, I had an idea in about 2000, I think, where I thought, you know what I bet people would buy? I bet people would buy water with vitamins in it.
Oh, no way, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then a couple of years later, I'm sure it existed before then, I just didn't know about it. But a couple of years later, vitamin water gets to be, you know, a gazillion-dollar thing. And I was pissed because I thought, man, that was my idea. Now that I'm not 20 or 18 or whatever it was.
Are you saying you have like a different perspective now? Come on, man.
I'd like to think that I do.
That's funny.
But yeah, no, now instead of being pissed that somebody has done this idea that I had 5 years ago, usually I'm glad because if it was that good an idea, now I get to buy the damn thing and I don't have to make it. It's awesome when other people use my ideas.
That's an interesting take because I do think there's some wisdom in that is kind of the idea versus creating a business around an idea. I mean, those are kind of uniquely different things. But if you haven't been through that, it's kind of one of those things that's hard to portray the experience for people. You know what I mean? Like, real quick, I'm curious what you think of this because I have this conversation a lot with, I feel like younger people. Maybe it's my unsolicited business advice to them or something. But I always say that, starting a telemark business, which is something you and I can relate on. Very few people probably can, there's not that many people out there that have tried that. So it's unique, but I look at sort of the modern version of what the word entrepreneur means. And to me, I call it the Shark Tank mentality now, which, are you familiar with the show Shark Tank?
Enough. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's this idea where you have the great idea and then you pitch it and then they give you $1 bajillion or they buy 51% of your company and then they make the stuff come to life.
They do all the work. Yeah.
Right. But it's like kind of funny because I always try to distinguish that with, like I said, generally younger people. I'm like, there's entrepreneur, like something you've done with Bluebird or like me with Freeheel Life. And then there's that stuff. And I'm like, it's kind of different. It's kind of a different deal, So I was just curious, what because it sounds like, when you were younger, you were like, yeah, that'd be great. Like, I'm going to make vitamin water. And then, maybe you don't attach the small business aspect. So I was just curious if that's kind of what you're almost referring to.
Yeah, it is. It is. And, as I said, I'd like to think I've grown up a bit since then. That the idea of having this great idea and somebody paying me for my idea, and that sounded great. And I mean, to be fair, if I had an idea that I thought was good now and somebody wanted to buy it, that still sounds great. But at the time, it was a funny inner conflict, I guess, because, part of it is I wanted to be an inventor, but I also wanted to have my own business. I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to be my own boss. But at the same time, I didn't really know what it was like to be your own boss, to figure out what kind of corporate structure you need, fill out all your quarterly tax forms, hope that you didn't screw it up this year so you get audited next year and get hammered, and, pay unemployment insurance, and, all the stuff that happens when you run a business that's not inventing. And so, it's, again, it's, you get older, you get wiser, you do things the best you know how. And sometimes you get on the other end of it and think, wow, inventing's pretty fun, but running your own business is really hard. And I never really had, I don't think I ever had the Shark Tank mentality, fully, purely that. But it seemed more like a plausible way of doing it then, that if the idea was good enough, somebody's going to buy it. I don't think that's really true anymore, at least not for any of my ideas. But that part of it, it doesn't appeal in quite the same way that it kind of did then.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's that's interesting because I like hearing where you're coming at from it, like the inventor aspect of it, because it's I don't know, like I almost think I've come at it almost more like I always say I'm kind of Telemark as a business, I think always fascinated me. So like I'm almost coming at it more from like the like I always tell people, they're like, how did you get into this? And I'm like, honestly, I think if Telemark as a business wasn't totally like such a weird puzzle, I don't know if I would have ended up down this weird path, like it's almost like how invention to you is almost, that's the puzzle for you and that's the exciting part. I feel like the business puzzle for me is the exciting part. And but yeah, for both of us, there's a lot of stuff that comes with that I don't think anybody tells you ahead of time. So
no, I sure didn't know. And I'm glad there are people like you that like to solve the business puzzle, but I'm kind of done with that part.
Well, so take me back. So the leashes was the first. When Bluebird, kind of take us into that zone, is like, how did the leash then turn into Bluebird Day Gear, like as a business? Yeah. So the need to do something better came first. Like, it's got to be stronger so that people like me don't break it.
And, I'm not a monster. I weigh like 170 pounds, and I at the time skied hard for me, but there are plenty of people who ski harder and are harder on their gear than me. I've never ripped bindings out. I know there are plenty of people that are harder on their gear. But even I was busting these things, and I thought, this is ridiculous. So it's got to be stronger. That's one. And it's got to be easy to use with your mittens on. And so I've got somewhere in the house probably 100 pages of sketches and notes and stuff where I've sketched out a bunch of ways that I think could work. And, I'm not just an inventor. I've got a degree in mechanical engineering. So it's, not only has it got to work, I've got to be able to make the thing. And so, there's a lot of, well, I could have it work this way, but I can't actually make those parts without spending way too much money, for example. And so there's a lot of, sort of back and forth on the design versus the manufacturing versus the, how do I prototype it? How do I test it? How do I make sure that people are going to understand how to use it? There's hundreds probably of pages of that. And I've got probably somewhere in the house, I've got this little, I think I actually put them in a display case, and I've never hung it on the wall. But, one of those little glass front display cases, I've got probably 30 different prototypes of the different shapes of the leashes that I thought were worth prototyping. So there are probably like 50 different designs that weren't worth prototyping, and maybe 2 or 3 that I thought were worth getting to that point of actually making stuff. And so I started making stuff. And I started out in wood and started making the things at, 4 times scale, something like that. So they were easy to make, easy to fiddle with, test them out. I made some, I think from wood, I went to plastic. I went to the grocery store. I bought a cutting board to use as the UHMW plastic that they make the cutting boards out of is conveniently easy to use, but also pretty strong, pretty tough. So it wasn't going to be brittle and crack in the cold. So I went and bought a cutting board, and we still use it in the kitchen. And it's got this leash clasp shaped cutout out of it from amazing. Where I cut the prototypes out of.
That's amazing.
And that's still, that's my go-to cutting board for, like cutting a steak or something, because it's the only one with the little trough. I think from there it probably went to aluminum. And I'm kind of a dork about files. I like files. Sometimes my wife gives me a file for Christmas. They're a good tool. So I spent a lot of time filing these aluminum prototypes, making them just right, figuring out how to, not only what shape do they need to be, but how do you use them? How do you make them? How do I make them in bulk? And got to the point where I was pretty satisfied. I liked the design. At this point, we're living in Colorado, living in Golden, but we're about to move back to near my wife's family in Vermont. And I think it was the last week we lived there. We took a little road trip around, went to 4 or 5 shops that I had connections in, one in Golden, one in Leadville, one in Dillon. I forget where the other one was, probably Colorado Springs. But went and showed my prototypes to these folks. At the time, I didn't really know the term hard goods buyer. It's one of those business things that, you learn it. You didn't know it before, but you find out that it's important because you're talking to the wrong person. And so I eventually talked to these hard goods buyers at these 4 shops and said, if I made this and it cost this much, do you think you'd buy it? And they all said, yeah. And so I decided, all right, that's good enough for me. And so I started ordering the tooling. I don't know, it was probably $20,000 of tooling to make the parts. And so got the parts made outside that I couldn't make myself. The $10,000 tool that I bought went in a $2 million machine at the vendor's place. But they'd send me the parts. I got the cable and the eyelets and the springs custom made, and all the little parts, and made all the fixtures and stuff to do the assembly at home. And I made up a batch, I don't know, 100 pairs, something like that. And beat the bushes again, and got, I don't know, 3 or 4 stores that agreed to buy some. And I decided, all right, let's do a soft launch, see how it goes. And it went really well. And I think I doubled the number of stores I was in every year for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. And I think the second or third year I was chatting to whoever I was chatting to, and they said, you know what I'd buy from you if you made it is smile plates. Is that year Valet, I guess, had admitted that they were out of stock, that they had broken their stamping tool in the 90s or something, and they'd just been selling through their stock because there wasn't enough demand for them to replace the tool. And that year, by coincidence, they ran out, and it was just, sorry, there are no more. So I thought, all right, well, I didn't invent that, but I can make those. So we started making those, and then got talking to more shops, and different shop, same kind of thing. People break a lot of heel levers. Here are the brands that I sell the most of. If you made a stronger one, I'd buy it. And so similar, couple of notebooks full of sketches of all kinds of crap that doesn't work, and some good stuff that does. And another one of these little display cases full of, I'm actually looking at it so I can count them. How many are in there, Jeff? There are 12 prototypes in that one.
Of the heel levers?
Of the heel levers.
Oh,
and these are the only ones that survived the experience to be worth putting in the case.
Did you start? Did you start with like plastic material before you went to the aluminum on those?
Yeah, so I started in same thing. I started in plywood.
Wow. Okay, that's awesome.
That next one is plastic. I wonder. I'm gonna have to remember where
your local grocery store doesn't have cutting boards for a few years because you're just like hand carving your tooling and stuff.
That's right. Watch out, cutting board manufacturers are coming for you.
I feel like cutting boards are funny enough. Have you ever seen how the early risers were guys that used to take UHMW cutting boards and make risers out of them?
I didn't know that, but it makes a lot of sense.
Totally.
It's plastic.
Yeah, I have some in the shop. It's funny because every once in a while we'll get some old vintage pair of skis that comes in, and there's like different variations, but you can see that it's a cutting board that someone just like either like shaped it like a toe piece, and then it had the 3-hole mounting pattern for like the old school Rivas or stuff like that. But yeah. It's funny that you were using cutting boards. I was like, oh man, that's so weird. The Telemark skiers and the cutting boards, like it just must be the go-to material for innovation.
Well, and probably at the time I felt really clever for figuring it out, but obviously other people had too, so it wasn't that clever. But I'll stay in that good company. I like it.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. but so plywood. Sorry, I cut you off on the levers. Like
2/3 of them are probably plywood. Then looks like 3 are plastic, and then 2 aluminum ones.
Wow, that is so. I'm trying to even imagine. You'll have to send me a picture of that because I'm trying to imagine like how was it multiple pieces of plywood that you kind of like screwed together or something?
So the thing about the lever, you know this from having made them yourself now, is that part of the design. So one of the things, I should back up a little bit. The thing that made the levers hard to design was trying to make them universal fit. Mm-hmm. There were sort of 2 or 3 real obvious ones that, like all the shops that I would talk to, it's these 2 or 3 brands break the most. And, some of that, people say that, most accidents occur within 10 miles of your house. And I feel like, yeah, well, most driving occurs within 10 miles of your house. That doesn't mean anything. And I've never bothered to check it out. But I wonder whether the levers thing is like that those 2 or 3 brands break the most because those 2 or 3 brands sell the most bindings. But, there were these 2 or 3, it's gotta fit those. And then it was, well, if those 2 are different enough that if I can make it fit those, I can probably make it fit everything. But those 2 were different enough that it was tricky to get it to fit both of them. And so the design evolved the way it did, really to ensure the universal fit aspect of it. And because of that, the design got more complicated than I would have liked, much more complicated than I would have done. If I'd been designing my own binding, and that's something I started to do and stopped a few times because it just got out of hand with how much money I would need to do it.
Yeah.
But if I were designing my own binding and the lever had to fit my binding and nothing else, boy, it'd be a much simpler part. It'd be a lot cheaper to make. It'd be a lot lighter. It'd be way easier to make. It would look very different from how it ended up looking. But because it had to fit these 2 or 3 bindings, and therefore might as well fit these 30 bindings, it got to be kind of the complicated shape that it is. And, I'm pretty satisfied with how it came out. But I always wanted it to be better than it turned out to be. And most of that's just because it was a lot of work to make them. That, again, that you're making them now.
It's like everything that we've gotten into, people don't realize how much work goes into it's like making skis, same thing. Like, I think we're all desensitized to you pick up a pair of skis off a wall and you're like, oh, cool. This should be worth that. And then, and I appreciate things a lot more now because you're like, wow, just the little, I don't want to cut you off too much, but one thing with the aluminum heel levers that's so fascinating that I didn't understand until we started making them here is so that starts in a bar of extruded aluminum, and then every single cut and like shape it's like each thing's a procedure. So every hole's a procedure, every groove is a procedure. So I just thought I'd point that out because I'm amazed just listening to you talk. I'm like, how did you come up with this thing? Because it is like, when you really look at it, and if you don't think about where it began, that's where there's a ton of respect like I have for how you thought that up and then worked through the issues of compatibility. That's a lot of bindings to figure out too. So and I was lucky to have 1 or 2 friendly shops that had a wide enough range of stuff that they would, I'd say, hey, can I come in and measure stuff? And they, yeah, come on in. And they'd let me come in and, measure the 20 different bindings they had in the back room. And had I not had that, the thing would have come out a lot less good. And so it was really nice to have some friendly shops around. And that's been one of the more enjoyable things about the whole experience is, I said early on when we were crossing ideas off the list that it's got to be in a field that we like. And, I love Telemarked ski, but that doesn't mean that everybody in the wholesale retail manufacturing space was going to be friendly. There's all kinds of stuff I like to do where I would think, if I went to the factory where they're making this stuff, maybe they won't be friendly. I don't know. It's easy to imagine. And I didn't know what to expect with Telly, but all the people at all the stores that I was trying to sell these things to were all really fun to talk to. And the customers, I would get people who would say, I hated your product. I couldn't make it work. I understand. No worries, man.
give you a refund. That's fine. But most of the people, even when they were telling me, hey, I think your thing stinks, were really friendly about it. And it was, it was always a fun experience. And, most of the people, of course, were really happy to get the thing. There's a pretty self-selecting set of people that, weren't just going to go in and buy whatever came on the binding at the shop that the shop put on there. If they were bothering to seek out, hey, I want a better leash, they're already primed to be the kind of people that are going to be happy when they find one. And I didn't really know that was going to happen, but it did. And it was super fun. And the people in the stores were pretty much without exception the same way, is that they were really happy to be approached with a new thing. And that was awesome and totally surprising.
I was going to say, what was the year? So what was the year you first came out with the leash? I don't even know if I know that.
I think I started selling it it was either 2011 or 2012, something like that. Certainly, so that driving tour we took of the shops in Colorado before we moved was 2011. And I think that we started making them for the winter of 2011, 2012. But it might have been the next one.
I was going to say, I was trying to, when you said you did a little driving tour, and I was like, because some of those shops, I think you probably went to Sawatch in Leadville.
Yep, they're not there anymore.
Not there anymore. I know there's like all these, when you start, Bentgate probably if you lived in Golden, I would think.
Yep. Yeah, there were one.
Do you remember all the other shops?
For sure, Wilderness Sports up in Dillon.
Oh, yep. Maybe Alpine. Did you go Alpine Quest? Maybe like in Edwards.
I know I sold to them before I was done, but they weren't one of my first ones. It might have been. What are they called? What stuff used to be all fresh on top of my head when I was calling them every year. But
what town? Do you remember what town it was?
Colorado Springs.
Oh, now I'm blanking. I know what you're talking about. I do remember that shop.
Yeah, and it's not Mountain Travelers. That's Rutland. Damn.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
No, it's. I don't know if that shop's there either. I know when you said Leadville, I was like, oh man, I totally remember Sawatch, and that's not even there anymore. It's just funny to think.
Heather's one of the first ones I talked to. She was pretty gung ho about it, but I don't know what happened to the shop, but it didn't last, which is a bummer. Sorry, Heather. Hope you're doing all right.
Yeah, I know for sure. Because I used to show my movies at a little coffee shop down the street from them, and that's how I got to know them. I used to put posters up there, probably around that same time, dude, which is super funny.
Yeah, we were probably in the shop the same day, man.
It probably. I know that's funny. I didn't even realize you lived in Colorado, because by the time I bumped into you, you were already in Vermont, which was probably around that time. It probably was like right after you kind of started, to be honest. 2012.
Yeah, it wasn't too long. Mountain Chalet. I knew I'd come up with it.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Matt at Mountain Chalet, for buying my stuff.
Oh yeah,
Mountain. It was great.
Oh yeah. I was thinking. Yeah, you're right. Mountain Chalet.
Yeah.
Good job. Good save.
Trouble with all the shops is, so many of them have mountain in the name. There's Mountain Travelers, there's Mountain Outfitters, there's Mountain Chalet, there's. I'm glad I'm not in the business of naming shops. It sounds hard.
Oh, that's funny. And it's funny, I didn't realize, so leashes came first, and then it's kind of interesting to see the shops helping you sort of with the next product wave, because I always wondered how that happened,
I didn't expect that either. I went into it thinking, I'm going to do leashes, and then I've got this adjustable pole idea I've been kicking around for 15 years that I'm probably never going to do anything with. Turns out adjustable poles have gotten better while I've been sleeping. And I still think the idea I have is solid, but it's no longer as compelling as I thought it was 20 years ago when I first started using adjustable poles, and they were not as good as they are now. And so it's, I could bust my hump trying to work on this, or I could just buy these better ones that are pretty darn good. And same thing with the bindings, is that I've had some what I thought were pretty good binding ideas, but everybody's doing a pretty good job making their bindings better. Thanks, 22 Designs. You guys do a good work. And I don't know if what's their name? They make the Spike.
Oh, geez,
that dude.
I can't remember his name. The Spike Bulldog. I don't think he's around anymore. I think I
wouldn't be surprised, but yeah.
Because I think he was
some of the things. Oh, go ahead, man.
No, I was like, that was always an interesting sort of like New England. Like the dude was like a doctor, and like I think if I remember right, I'm probably making this up, but it was kind of like,
I think you're right.
I think when I opened the shop, I remember being like, "Hey, dude, like I want to carry like all this weird obscure stuff," and he was like, I don't really want to deal with people, so like I sell these to my friends, or like it was something like that, right? Like he's like, I'm making my money over here, like or he was retired or whatever, and it was kind of one of those funny, mysterious bindings that I have on my wall, but nobody really knows where it came from.
yeah, and so I would sketch out, here's how I want it to work, and I would sketch it out, and they, a lot of the time they'd end up looking like sort of this blend of 22 Designs and Spikes. And you guys have had a lot of good ideas. Damn, I should just buy my bindings from you.
You know what's funny is that 22 toe, when you look at like an outlaw toe, it's basically like a spike toe. And that predated the outlaw toe. Like there's some funny stuff like maybe engineer, or I'm more like the history geek. And so like sometimes when we've got these old bindings next to each other on the wall, I'm like, damn, look at that. That's totally where this came from, And like there's some weird history like that. Like, have you ever seen the UTB, Ultimate Telemark binding?
If I have, I've forgotten about it.
Man, I'll send you a picture. So as far as I know, this was the first guy to do a hard wire. And I think there was actually some sort of a dispute with Volet at some point. I don't know if they took the idea and no trademark. I don't know what it was. But this guy's binding was wild looking. First of all, it was Rasta colors, aluminum heel. It had like a really cool, one of the best like flip up climbing posts I've seen, hard wires. But the coolest part about this one is that there's a little button on the front, and if you don't look at it close enough, you think it's like a tour release, but it's before tour release existed. And what this did is you push the button and the binding comes off on your foot, and there's a crampon on the toe underneath. So you could hike.
Turns out people have good ideas, and sometimes those good ideas get sort of, covered over by the sediments of time and turn into fossils.
Yeah.
And come back. And, it's, I don't know anything about the history of, the axle toe versus the spike toe and, whether there was any cross fertilization there. But looking at it from the engineer's perspective that I've got, a lot of the time, those kinds of things come naturally out of, how do I make this thing strong? How do I make this thing using manufacturing methods that are, affordable and mature, and I can just go down the street to the sheet metal place and get them to do it. And sometimes that stuff pushes the design to the same place from, different people on different sides of the world end up in the same design place simply because manufacturing technology or whatever pushes you there, even if you've never seen the other thing. And it's, again, I'm an engineering dork. I love that kind of stuff. And that's why I wanted to be an inventor, that kind of thing. And so I really enjoy looking at it from that perspective and saying, look, this thing and this binding looks like that one. And I feel better about the fact that a lot of my sketches ended up looking like it too.
Yeah, it is interesting because, I think people end up at a similar position with stuff. And, because it's sort of the needs driving maybe the design, like even if you're not seeing each other's stuff. But there's a lot of crossover. Yeah, that's wild, man. I was trying to think, like timeline wise, like the first time I met you was when I lived in Vermont working for Telemarked Skier magazine. And then I don't even remember. Did we meet at like Mad River or something? I don't even remember how we met. I remember coming to your house to see the production.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever went.
It's hard to remember.
That's how I feel. I'm like, that was kind of a while ago. But either way, I remember you're like, yeah, come by the house. I'll show you the whole production. And I think that was at Springfield. Is that where you were at?
Yeah.
Vermont. Yeah. And I remember coming to your house. I got to make the leashes, which I still I still have a leash that I made.
I think aside from you guys having taken that on from me, I think you're still the only other person in the world who's made an entire leash.
Really? Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
I still have it in my office, and I always laugh because every time I see it, I look at the scorched plastic. And I remember you being like, oh, that's a little hotter than you need to get it or whatever. And like when you're doing the shrink, and
yep.
But yeah, no, and it was cool because I got to see all this stuff, and I was like, man, this is rad. Like, you got these 3 products, you're making them out of your house. I remember seeing the cable puller in your kitchen, which I still love because now I have the cable puller that was in your kitchen, and it has banana stickers all over it, like fruit stickers.
Yep.
And I love it, but yeah, so it was interesting because so that probably was around 2012, 2013-ish. And then when I opened Freeheel Life in 2014, we started carrying Bluebird stuff. And that was kind of how we connected over that. And then, yeah, we just kind of went for it. I can't even remember because I remember, it's funny that I don't know if you remember this. This is really funny. I came across a geographic non-compete or something that you and I drafted up because I was like, we're going to be the best Telemark retail store in Utah, but we want to be the only ones. And you're like, sure. You were like, sure, dude. Like, sounds good. I don't know if you remember that, but I found that.
I remember that. I had this, I had this giant spreadsheet of, all the stores I would call and, how soon I should call them because they had told me no the last time and I should, call them in a year, see it again. Who do I talk to? Who do I ask? Ask them about their dog, that kind of stuff was all in there. And I had this color code for, I'm in this store, highlight that, yellow or whatever. And then I had another one for other stores that I had put on the list before I got you. And then I color coded them, I think, black to be the label on it was within the Freeheel Life exclusivity zone.
That is hilarious, dude.
It turned out, I probably didn't tell you this at the time, but it turned out not to be a problem at all because every store I talked to in Utah, every single one without fail said, I can't give away my Tele stuff.
Yeah, well,
and so they wouldn't buy anything. Nobody would buy anything from me. It was ridiculous.
That's so funny because I think I remember you did actually tell me that, and
good.
And I was having a conversation with another brand that I won't name literally yesterday, and I had tried that same thing like around that. This is like 8 years ago, and of course they're looking at me like I was like, we're the best, like we're gonna but I'm kind of talking out of my ass at that point because we've been around for like 2 years, and I'm like, you should give us exclusivity for Utah, whatever. And it's kind of funny because the rep still sells to all these other places, and then they're sitting on their equipment, they're sitting on and I'm always laughing because like we can't, we'll run out of this thing and then it's like we can't replenish it, and then there's like these shops that can't actually get rid of it, and I'm always like, can we just like that's why I pitched it. I was like, can we just get like a buyback program where we like go to all the shops that since you won't give us the exclusive, like we can go in and like clear them out at the end of the year and help alleviate the weight, so that's funny, man. But
it was easy for me, I wanted to sell the damn stuff, and you want to put this rule on it? Sure. You're still buying? Sure. Works for me, man. Knock yourself out.
Well, and it worked out because, and then, I guess part of a big reason I wanted to have you on the podcast was sort of this handoff that ended up happening like literally years ago. You and I started, I think you called me in 2018.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
And you were like, hey, I'm looking at moving on from this, I think it'd be a good fit if you guys are interested in acquiring it. And, and I was like kind of stunned, but I was also like, this is awesome because we know how to sell this stuff. And also, despite not being an engineer, I kind of was like, yeah, we're going to make stuff. Which,
well, yeah, it was, I'd be there in my basement making this stuff. And usually I'd do my selling in like March or something, because that's when stores would place orders. And so I'd be making this stuff over the summer, and I'd be looking out the window, listening to my kids having a good time in the yard while I'm down there, busting my hump, standing at the mill, making the levers or whatever, and thinking, I'm not going to get this time back. I don't want to end up 10 years from now regretting that I was making leashes and not playing with my kids. And I wrestled with that for a couple of years before I decided, all right, it's got to go. I made it and it was fun, but I'm going to regret it now if I don't stop. And so, I called up all the stores too. I would say, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to stop doing this. And I felt like one of those politicians saying, I'm resigning from my Senate seat to spend more time with my family. I felt like I was concealing some terrible scandal or something. But I legitimately did. I wanted to spend more time with my family, and so I decided to stop. And so it was this decision of, do I just stop and let it evaporate, or do I try and find someone to pass it on to? And I didn't really think anybody was going to bite. And part of that's probably because I was the only one who truly, really understood how much work it was to make this stuff. And so I hope you don't feel swindled, Josh, that,
no, I'm just sitting over here laughing because I'm like, man, I'm the perfect guy to bite on that. Like, I don't even know what I'm getting into. I mean, I'm still saying that. But at the same time, I love the puzzle. Like, you've left me this puzzle that, it's beautiful. And I love that hopefully you're getting to spend more time with your kids because of it. Yeah, for sure. I love that. That's even the cherry on top for me, man. I love hearing that part of the story.
Well, and the opposite is true for me. The cherry on top is the company didn't just disappear. I was ready for that. I was ready for it to just say, all right, I'm pulling the plug. That was fun while it lasted, but now it's done. And I knew if I did that, I'd feel bad that I stopped. But I at least knew I'd get to spend the time with my kids. But now, I'm still getting to spend the time with my kids. But now you get to, now I get to watch you continue to make my stuff. And that's the cherry on top for me, is that it didn't just disappear.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Yeah. And I think the craziest part is when this all went down is you and I are like working through this in 2019, and like that's been the craziest part, because people are probably like, dude, that was a while ago. And what happened was, and I think this is kind of an interesting part of this story, because I remember, at this point we're making nothing here. I mean, that was always my dream to be a manufacturer, but like, again, I'm the idea guy, I'm the business guy. Like, half the time I'm like, I just jump in the deep end and I'm like, yeah, I'll figure it out, and this was definitely one of those things where, you approached us, and of course I was like, I bit hard. I'm like, this is awesome. I think we can do this. It's a good fit. We know each other. We already sell the product. And part of the deal was, I was like, why don't we, I was like, if you can give us like a year's worth of, or, finish making whatever inventory you have, that'll buy us a year so that we can.
Plenty of time.
Yeah, plenty of time, right? Except then there's a global pandemic in the middle of this thing. And like, that's what was so crazy about the whole timing, is then we couldn't get the equipment from your place to my place, and I mean, I don't want to bore people with the details. Anyways, it took us longer to do it.
I think that's worth bringing up is that, we had this plan where I was going to make you a year's worth of stuff, which was going to be plenty to tide you over for us to get all the crap from my house to your place. And I think you were going to you were going to host me on your couch or something. And I was going to teach you guys how to do all this stuff on site in Utah, I think what we talked about was we got to get this stuff out of my basement. The ground starts to thaw, and by April of 2020, the ground will be hard enough to pull the truck around to get this heavy stuff out of my basement without sinking into the yard in mud season. It's just yes, let's do it in April of 2020. That's the perfect time to do stuff. Turns out.
I mean, isn't that, and it really was, that was the timing, because we had talked about this. We were going to rent a U-Haul. I think a couple of us were going to come out, hoist it out of your basement, because there's the mill and all this other equipment, the arbor presses, that kind of stuff. And we're like, oh yeah, we'll just come out and make a trip, and then we'll fly you out and you'll teach us how to do it. And it's going to be gravy.
No problem. It's going to be awesome.
Right. And we've got enough to get us through the next year while we figure this out. And then pandemic hits, that happens, and then we basically got through that. The follow-up was we get through that next season, and in the meantime we're still dealing with pandemic stuff. By that point, you and I are kind of like, okay, maybe we should try to source some of this stuff from because then it was winter again. So then it was okay, how are we going to do this? And then I started I remember hitting you up, and you were trying to help me find the machine, the milling machine. And you're helping me on our local Craigslist. You're like, okay, I think this is the one. And funny story I'll just put in here, because I don't know if I ever told you this, is I go and pick that thing up. I rented a U-Haul trailer, because I didn't have a trailer, flatbed. Mm-hmm. I get to this guy's house, and it's sitting outside, and he has a hoist, like an engine hoist. Is that the right word? Yeah. And basically puts it into the back of the trailer, and I strap it down. I drive it back in this U-Haul trailer to the shop, and I put it in the back, and then I realize that I can't get it out. So I had to unhook the trailer, leave it in the garage, and then I had to go buy a engine hoist, and then I had to assemble that to then hoist it out into the room. And that's how I got it out, because I had to get the trailer back that I rented. And it was this whole ordeal, dude. And anyways, we got it all set up. But there's some funny stories to go with everything we've gotten. I'm just like, oh, geez, I remember that,
Well, I hope you've, rebuilt the engines and all the vehicles for all your employees with that engine hoist. For sure. You got to make use of that thing.
For sure. Yeah, no, totally. I've used it once. No, but it's I guess the happy ending to the story is that it took us longer to put all of the pieces together because of the timing issue, and just small crew, and then working through it. And, part of the timing of having you on the podcast is great, because we just got the first batch of heel throws out last week, and smile plates.
Awesome.
And we are in the process of working on the leashes, and it's been amazing, man. Kudos to you. And it's wild. I so much respect for you for even learning how to create that stuff out of your own brain. It's been a real, I don't know. It's been the next step for me as a business guy, to make stuff. And that's been my favorite thing the last couple of years, is I keep thinking, I keep telling these guys, I'm like, if we own the machines, we're good to go. We just got to buy machines. And everybody's like, what are you talking about, dude? So
I've successfully done it. I've gotten you buying more machines. That was the whole goal the whole time.
Oh, it's been, well, and I guess I should throw it in there. So in the midst of trying to figure the Bluebird stuff out, we started making skis. So I was looking at the original operating videos, like as we were trying to figure out heel throws and all that. Today we were looking at it and I was like, man, when we started doing the procedures for this stuff in 2021, we hadn't even made the ski factory yet. And so now we've got this whole side with like all these machines and all this material. It's a real blessing, man. It's like the next level of commitment for us. And I really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to carry on that tradition. You know, it's cool.
I can't wait to come see it sometime, man.
Yeah, no, it's great. Before I forget, where did Bluebird Day Gear name come from? I don't even know the history of that.
So let me think about that. And we made lots of lists of ideas for what to call it. Most of them, of course, were stupid, just like the lists of other ideas that we crossed off. But I told you about, at the time I was living in California and skiing in the Sierras, and I was going up. I was living in Los Angeles at the time and going up not quite every other weekend, but pretty close with some buddies. And I'd never heard the term Bluebird Day before at that point. This was like 2003 or something. And we get on the lift with this, classic ski town, ski bum stoner dude who says, it's a Bluebird Day, man. And we all hadn't heard it. And so we thought it was hilarious. And it just, it stuck with me that's a great word for it, man. That's perfect. And, I found later, lots of people use it. But that was the first I'd ever heard it. And for whatever reason, that just stuck with me and came out on that list of what the hell are we going to call this company? And I can't quite remember how it made it to the very end, but that's the one that made it.
That's awesome. Thanks.
So thank you, anonymous stoner dude.
That's what I was going to say. Thank you, stoner dude in the Sierra. Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy, man. Well, I don't know. Any other closing thoughts, man? It's been a real pleasure to hear the history, because I think you and I have been working through this thing for a number of years now, and it's thank you for your patience, first off, because handing off your baby to somebody else and then seeing so much time go by.
I'm glad somebody wanted the baby. As I said, I was willing to let it go and have it just sort of drift off into the sunset. And when somebody wants your baby, it's pretty awesome. And it's a good feeling that it's going. So I'm glad you've got the patience to do something with it. Yeah, absolutely. And two things that kind of come to mind that are funny is, despite everybody thinking that we only talk about NTN, I think there are no NTN products in Bluebird's lineup. And so that should be a good indicator. And also there was rumor on the internet that I told you about that I thought was hilarious, which was that we acquired Bluebird Day Gear so we could shut you down and gain market share, which I thought that was awesome, but kind of weird. Whoever floated that rumor, I regret to tell you that I was shutting down anyway. So he saved it all. And the lack of NTN in there, I'll do you one better on that. So we started making the smile plates. And, I knew of them and I knew a little bit about their history, but not all of it. And we designed the packaging for it to, explain what they're for. And I'd heard them called tenny toe plates for a while, but I didn't know how to spell that. So we just did our best, and we misspelled the guy's fucking name. Sorry, I don't know.
You're fine. No, you're good to go.
Sorry, dude.
No, that's perfect Freeheel lifestyle. Thank you.
And I actually got an email from Tenny to correct me on my history of the things. Because, I reported the history as best I knew in our product documentation, and I got it wrong. And the dude actually came out, and emailed me and said, hey, he was super great. He was super friendly about it. And and sorry for misspelling your name, Tenny. I hope you're listening. We had already made enough packaging at that time that we had to use it all before correcting your name, but we would have. And we would have corrected all the history on the thing if we hadn't already printed it all out. So sorry, dude. But it was awesome to, hear from this guy who had made them, in the 70s or whatever it was. And that was the sort of perfect encapsulation of the unexpected joy of running this company. That this guy, he was paying attention. He found us. He found that we were making his thing. And so now you are, carrying on Tenny's legacy.
Wow. That's cool. I had heard that name, but that's a good reminder. Like, I don't know if I knew the whole history of that.
I'll have to forward you his email so that you get it right if you ever, make the same mistake that I did. But it's Tenney, not Tenny.
Oh,
sorry, dude.
No, I would love that. That's so great too.
I'll dig it out.
No, and I will report when we kind of put it out there last week, like, hey, this is official. Because I've kind of like not said anything for this whole time because I'm like, man, it's been I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's been a lot to figure out, and
yeah.
And it feels really satisfying. I mean, there's constant improvement we're trying to figure out because, we want to uphold the standard that you set, and there's a lot of leave it to the non-engineer dude to be like, yeah, we got this. Hold my beer, watch this.
Scrap inventory, dude. It takes practice to get it right and to do it efficiently. There was a lot of stuff I threw away when I was learning how.
Yeah, it's been the intricacies of making things. I think it's a real craft, and I think it's kind of like when we were talking about like the rope tows, like that era of skiing.
Yep.
And like the love and the work that like goes into running those little town hills. Like I feel like, I don't know, and maybe it's just because I'm the history geek and nostalgic for that kind of stuff, but when we're making this stuff, like the skis, the heel levers, the smile plates, the leashes, like, there's a real connection to the product, and I'm not trying to be cheesy about it, but it's like, I hope people realize that like there's hands getting put on this stuff, and it's like, I don't even know. It's almost hard to articulate it. I think I know you probably know what I'm trying to say, but it's like this really,
I do, yeah.
It's a really interesting part of the ski business that I don't know if it kind of gets glossed over, this like manufacturing side of making this stuff that I think is it's really cool. And I hope we can kind of bring people more into the world of it. And I hope this podcast illustrates kind of where it came from and kind of the heart and soul that you put into it, and all the lists and the family aspect of it, and pulling leashes in your kitchen, like, I don't know, man. I just, I love it.
It was truly a family business. My wife did all the web work and the graphics work. And it's just, we both worked hard on it, and you're right. It's sort of a craft, and I'm glad you guys are picking it up.
Yeah. Well, we'll do our best, man. And I appreciate you being here and just adding to the story, man. That's so important to me, and let people know where it came from. And for those that don't know, it's part of the Freeheel Life family, but we're going to keep the Bluebird name and make sure that lives on. And once we get a handle on these things, we'll hopefully find some new ideas. We'll start keeping a list. So
hang on. Are you saying that you're going to pay me for my ideas?
Maybe. Bluebird Day Gear might be making dog pee cups. That might be the next thing. I don't know. Maybe.
I will have made it at that point.
I hope someone emails me about that and hopefully ask if they can use the idea. So
Please do. I've got plenty more bad ideas if you want them. But if you can take this one and run with it, go for it, dude.
I love it. Well, thanks for being here, brother. I hope you have a fantastic winter, and thanks again for everything you've done and for passing this on to us.
Yeah, it's been great, man. I'm excited that it still lives.
Love it, man. All right. Talk to you soon.
All right. See you, man.
What a great conversation with Jeff. Super grateful and honored that a small business owner, a small Telemark business owner, and myself were able to get to know each other over, the course of time. And for us to have the opportunity to go from somebody that was retailing a product to be able to carry on the craftsmanship and the concepts that he's got. And I'm super excited to keep Bluebird Day Gear alive. And we've been learning a lot. And it's really cool to be in the manufacturing space. That's really where we want to reside, and gives us a lot of opportunity to share the Freeheel life with other people in a broader sense. In other retail spaces besides our own flagship store in Salt Lake City. So really cool conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed it out there. It meant a lot to me that he could take the time and chop it up with me a little bit, give me some history, give all of us some history, but there's little tidbits in there that I really enjoyed too, because sometimes we're going at such a fast pace. We kind of ended up with making the acquisition, and sometimes you don't get the whole story even though you think you know it. So it was a great time. So I want to be sure that you guys are staying in touch with us across all of our social media platforms. Of course, if you're into that, email list is the best way, because if you're not scrolling around all the social media sites, email is a good way to get what's going on, get some news, find out what's coming into the shop, and we want to get you all prepared with what you need to get on the slopes once that comes around. So mailing list, you can hit the link in the show notes to get to that. You can email us directly at customerservice@freeheellife.com. Email me directly at podcast@freeheellife.com. I've been loving some of the emails coming in, some origin stories. Some people are really digging on stuff. And it's been great to hear, and I'll be covering some of those in some future podcasts here in the next week or two. So thanks for sending those in, and I think that's it for the week. Really great episode, fun to have somebody else on, and looking forward to next Monday. So until then, brothers and sisters of the turn, spread Telemark always.